The blinding spotlights enveloping the red carpet seemed to sear directly into Meghan's soul as she smiled radiantly for the dense throng of paparazzi. This was her moment, a crowning celebration at the prestigious Metropolitan Museum of Art's annual fashion gala to honor her as a pioneering style icon and humanitarian leader. With Harry beaming supportively by her side, Meghan exuded regal poise and grace in her dazzling crimson Givenchy gown. She patted the impeccably tailored fabric with gentle confidence as she worked every angle for the hungry photographers clamoring around her. Finally reaching the heavily flanked entrance, Meghan stole one last glowing look over her shoulder for the ravenous pack before ascending the museum steps. But just as she turned with a waft of silken arrogance, a startling voice suddenly pierced through the camera flashes like a bolt of lightning. Well, if it isn't the Duchess of Delusion herself. The unmistakable nasal rasp of Anna Wintour rang out in thunderous judgment, instantly halting Meghan's regal march up the scarlet carpet. The infamous editor-in-chief of Vogue emerged from the shadowy vestibule with a withering sneer, dressed in one of her legendary fur coats and sunglasses. With a few terse gestures of her bejeweled fingers, a phalanx of ice-cold security officers instantly materialized by Wintour's side like some ornery Queen's Guard. Meghan stood there stunned in front of the crowd, a deer in the headlights as the blood drained from her carefully made-up face. Next to her, Harry could only manage a gulp as he recognized the sheer force of malevolent power his wife had somehow grievously invoked. Spreading your delusional disinformation and pernicious lies all across the world is one thing, Wintour declared in a booming baritone of judgment. But the unmitigated gall of daring to show your wildly overrated face at this hallowed event is the sin of hubris itself. With a few barked orders and precise hand signals, the monolithic security team instantly swarmed around the frozen Duchess with military efficiency. Within moments, Meghan was utterly engulfed in an opaque cordon of imposing black-suited staffers, her tiny frame overwhelmed by their burly forms. What are you doing?" Meghan squeaked in abject terror, thrashing futilely as the unstoppable tide of sheer masculine beef closed in around her. "You can't treat me like this. Don't you know who I am?" As tears of terrified confusion streaked down the Duchess' stupefied face, Anna Wintour merely responded with a merciless roll of her eyes behind her sunglasses. "Yes, and that's precisely the jaw-droppingly overinflated sense of self-importance that has landed you in this predicament," the editrix snapped with undisguised contempt. "Frankly, my dear, the world of legitimate talent and accomplishment has grown quite weary of your tiresome stunt queen antics and grifting deceptions." Meghan's mouth gaped open like a gasping fish as the blood suddenly drained from her face. There was no mistaking the blunt venom and disgust lacing each consonant of Wintour's verbal lashings, a full-force rejection of everything she thought her personal brand and persecuted martyr identity represented. Just then, Meghan noticed several paramedics shouldering through the chaotic scrum with a stretcher and heavy body bag, their universal signs of trauma response sending her stomach plunging into free-fall panic. Had things really escalated this drastically? Wait, I don't understand. What is going on here?" she bleated plaintively as the cordon continued constricting. Somewhere behind her, Harry's muffled voice could be heard pleading with the unmovable security forces as well, equally overwhelmed by the brazen absurdity of what was unfolding. "What's going on is that I am officially putting an end to your charade once and for all," Anna rejoined with blistering contempt. "No mea culpas or contrived image rehab tours can save you now." Meghan's heart stopped as the unmistakable shrill of ambulance sirens filled the air, additional NYPD units screeching up outside the museum with lights ablaze. She saw terrified staff members frantically waving their arms and shouting for everyone to clear the areas as a perimeter was established. Why are you calling the National Guard?" Meghan stammered with palpable dread creeping into her voice. "I have done nothing wrong. This is utter discrime." But Wintour cut her off with a rigid slicing gesture of her hand, clearly having exhausted any more niceties or consideration towards the Duchess. When next she spoke, her tone dropped into an exquisitely menacing baritone growl. "Do not mistake my culling of your deceitful presence from this event as anything less than an extermination, you parasitic grifter," the fashion icon intoned with undisguised loathing. "After decades of poisoning the cultural well with your insidious victimhood theater and hysterical truthiness, I am taking it upon myself to personally excise you from this world once and for all." Mercifully for her spiraling stress levels, Meghan was spared from having to formulate a response to her deranged defenestration. As if manifested from the ether by Anna's primal decree itself, the deafening whup-whup-whup of heavy rotor blades suddenly pierced the chaos from above. Looking up through the gaps in the security cordon, Meghan's jaw dropped in visceral horror at the unmistakable outline of a fearsome Apache gunship materializing over the museum's iconic roof. An ear-splitting hail of minigun fire exploded from its fuselage, tracer rounds and flaming rocket exhaust forks illuminating the night sky with hellish strobe light intensity. At that moment, everything seemed to enter a chilling, slow-motion torrent of aural whiteout and explosive violence crashing down from above. Faces contorted in frozen screams of sheer terror, scorching debris rained down in fiery cyclones, and Meghan was suddenly jackhammered to the unforgiving pavement beneath a tidal wave of scorching steel exhaust and military-grade anti-personnel force. Some eternal, deafening heartbeats later, the sickening fog of sizzling smoke finally lifted enough for her to fully appreciate the sheer destructive spectacle consuming the once stately Met Gala. Merciless rotor downwash fanned the inextinguishable firestorm, as seemingly endless salvos of firepower continued pounding anything moving outside into unrecognizable pulp. Utterly agape, Meghan numbly rose to her knees through the apocalyptic carnage, her perfect gown shredded and scorched beyond recognition. Beneath the raging thunderhead of the pulsating gunship above, Anna stood unperturbed in the heart of the maelstrom like the last blood-soaked ruler of an ashen empire. "And so, Duchess, we bid you an unceremonious adieu," the unshakable editrix declared with finality into her satin clutch as if it were some oversized captain's radio mic. "Perhaps, like the eternal flame here reducing you to cinders, this will serve as an ignoble lesson to all future grifters looking to exploit their way into inner circles of authentic grace."